If companies are relying on AI to create their content for them, they don't own it. And then there's the gray area of, well, how much does a human have to be involved to get a copyright? And it gets even more complicated because some countries are saying that you can have a copyright in AI generated content and most countries don't. And so I could see that blowing up is just a mess down the road, but we'll see what happens.
Oh wow, who's in charge of making these laws? The lawmakers, I guess.
Well, in the US, they tend to be old white guys. And when I look at them, I look at them and I think, do you even know how to turn on your computer? Like, you remind me of my law professors who would literally have secretaries print out their emails, put it on their desk. They would handwrite the response, give it back to the secretary who would email the student.
No
So,
way. That is insane.
Hey, I'm Armando Leduc, producer, film actor, and owner of Leduc Entertainment. I've chosen a life off the beaten path and wanted to find others that are doing the same. Spaghetti on the Wall is a show based on all of the years that I've thrown spaghetti on the wall and nurtured what stuck. We will share fun stories, ideas, tips, tricks, and more. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruth Carter's in the building. Howdy. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. Did you hear the applause for you?
I did. That was so sweet.
You like it? It's good.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, so we're talking about legal implications of AI. We're talking about integrity. We're talking about your experience as a non-binary person living in the United States, and your books, and you're an attorney and just super interesting individual. So I'm so glad you're on the show. Let's hop right in and let's talk about what are the legal implications of AI. That's interesting.
It is interesting, and it is still a moving target because, as you probably know, the law lags so far behind technology, which is going so fast. And so we're dealing with laws that were written before we even had a computer in everyone's house and definitely in everyone's back pocket to figure out how do these laws apply to this. And so one of the big questions that is going through the courts right now in the U.S. is are an artist's rights being violated if their art is being used to train the AI machine which generates the output? So,
Wow.
yes,
I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, but that makes sense.
it does, because if you know that if you own the copyright, you get to control where your work is copied. That's kind of the issue, is that these companies are copying things off the internet, usually just scraping it, which again, making a copy, and you're training your AI machine. That's a problem. On the flip side, there's a problem in these lawsuits so far where the people who are alleging they have been harmed, the judges are saying you haven't shown that you have specifically been harmed by this practice.
Right.
If it's happening. So what's a lot of times happening is they file a lawsuit, the defendants file a motion to dismiss, the courts grant it with leave to amend. And so the original lawsuits are being revised to add in these specific damages to the artists who brought the lawsuit. And so basically, some of these lawsuits have been going on for close to a year, and they haven't really left the gate. So we're nowhere closer to figuring out if that, how that issue is going to be resolved. The other issue with AI is if you only input an idea into the AI machine and it pumps out, the output, there's no copyright in that because no human was involved in the creation of an original work of authorship. So companies, if companies are relying on AI to create their content for them, they don't own it. And then there's the gray area of, well, how much does a human have to be involved to get a copyright? And it gets even more complicated because some countries are saying that you can have a copyright in AI generated content and most countries don't. And so I could see that blowing up is just a mess down the road, but we'll see what happens.
Oh wow, who's in charge of making these laws? The lawmakers, I guess.
Well, in the U.S., they tend to be old white guys. And when I look at them, I look at them and I think, do you even know how to turn on your computer? Like, you remind me of my law professors who would literally have secretaries print out their emails, put it on their desk. They would handwrite the response, give it back to the secretary who would email the student.
No
So,
way. That is insane.
yeah.
But you're right though. That's crazy because like yeah, legal is like, okay, something happens, you make a law, then something else happens, you amend it, then something else happens, you amend it, right? But that whole process takes a while. And meanwhile, AI is like brrr, like it's just moving. So how do you create legislation that protects something that is moving so fast?
You don't. Unfortunately, that's kind of been the case.
He's like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, when the majority of the copyright law that we currently have was mostly written or went into effect in 1978. So it's older than I am. So yes, we've amended it a couple of times since then, but we can only hope that there will be amendments or things added that make sense, and by the time they go into effect, they won't already be out of date. So I'm curious to see if we'll see something from the U.S. legislation or legislature or maybe an agency that requires you to label when content is AI generated, much like you have to label ads as sponsored content so that people know that they're looking
Or
at
it's
an
organic
ad.
or not.
And again, how much does it have to be? Just 1% makes it organic, or
Right.
so yeah,
That's so funny.
it's a cluster.
That's wild. We did a sketch that's coming out. It'll probably be out by this time, but we're like on a farm, right? And we do content, and we're like, all this content is organic content, right? There's no, no, it's all farm raised content, right? So it's really funny.
Exactly. I would not be surprised if a phrase comes out that is similar to that. Is it organic? Is it artisanal?
Is this organic? Right. Yeah. Is this human made?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
No, which it should. Look, I want to talk about your experience as a non-binary person since you like put it front and center. Let's talk about it. I am fascinated with with just everything that surrounds this new movement, right? How did the words come about? How did the labels come about? Was there like a and I see like a council where it's all like, all right, now it's from now on it's this, boom, we've said it. So how did that, do you know how all of this sort of transpired and how we are where we are today with like the verbiage?
A little bit. So the terms like cis and trans have been around for forever. Those are Latin prefixes. I learned those words in organic chemistry class, that it had to do with the configuration of molecules. Cis is a prefix that means same. Trans is a prefix that means opposite. So if you're cis, you're the same gender that you were assigned at birth. If you're trans, you're not the gender you were assigned at birth. So that's where those words came from. I don't know where non-binary came from as a word specifically, but it's perfectly fitting for people like me who don't fit into the male-female gender binary. So it's so simple. It's like non-binary. I am outside that system.
And when you came across this, was this something that like you were like, I always felt this, and then this word came and it was like, that's finally what explains what I'm feeling inside. Is that right? Is that how it happened?
Basically, yes. I knew as young as 4 that I was different from my peers. And I remember being in 4th grade feeling like my female classmates were like aliens to me. They were so weird. And I grew up in competitive gymnastics, which again, very girly. Again, my teammates were so weird. And it turned out they weren't the alien one. I was. And I knew I wasn't a guy. So I knew I wasn't that kind of trans person. But I always kind of just felt like it didn't click. I knew originally I thought I was bisexual, and I always thought there were 2 genders. Now I'm pansexual, meaning I'm attracted to potentially somebody of any gender. But when I learned about non-binary people, when I was in my 30s, it just clicked. It was just like, oh, that's what I am. And thankfully, I was born in a state that was one of the early adopters of allowing non-binary birth certificates, so I was able to get that. And then from that, I was able to get my non-binary driver's license, and now I have my passport. So I have, the non-binary trifecta complete. But it's still a challenge, and I encounter issues with it on a daily basis, and so and any questions that anybody has about my experience is fair game.
So yeah, what is your experience? Yes, tell me.
Tell you, I am so aware that we live in a binary centric society, like bathrooms and clothing sections in department stores, or I do endurance racing, and so when I go to sign up, even buying health insurance, to this day, I have not been able to find a health insurance policy for non-binary people, even though across the board, that's what all my documents say. As the English language, we don't have a term for sir or ma'am that's gender neutral. So like every situation involving customer service is a nightmare. Buying clothes isn't fun because either I want things that are more masculine presenting, but I have an estrogen generated body, so certain things just don't fit. And I don't want to wear pink. No offense, I don't have a problem with the color. I just don't want it on me. Thankfully, earlier this year, I was able to have top surgery, so double mastectomy, flat closure. So I can go outside in public without a shirt on, no problem, anytime I want, because I have no boobs. I don't even have nipples. So it's not illegal. So yeah, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of just my everyday life of dealing with, okay, where do I go? What do I do? How do I put clothes on my body? As a lawyer, I've asked my senior partner, I said, okay, if I go to court and the judge misgenders me and they say miss instead of mix, which MX, the gender neutral honorific, am I allowed to correct them? And my partner said no. Because when you're in court, you are there representing your client, and you don't want to risk your judge having a negative view of you impacting the outcome of your case.
That's interesting. Because, it is your identity. And so, you have a bunch of people, which I don't fucking get. A bunch of people that are just like, I'm against it. You know what I mean? I'm like, what are you against, really? Like, I don't understand what you're against. I just don't understand the concept. But how do we, as a society, create this space where it's just it's tolerant and it's like, whatever. Like, just do your thing. Like, what is this? How is this impacting you? Like,
exactly
how you being non-binary is affecting me. I don't, So how do we do that as a society? in your opinion?
I think the right thing to do is to look at our institutions to see how can we be inclusive. I think every single user bathroom should be labeled as, all genders. Like, why do we have a single user bathroom for men and women in some places? Makes no sense. Just be like, this is a bathroom. You may use it. If you have an ongoing relationship with a person, like they're your client, they're your customer, they're in your rewards program, provide the opportunity for them to update their profile. So if it's a different name or pronouns, have that and then use it. A common thing I've run into is I've either gone to a company I have a relationship with and say, hey, how do I update my profile? And they'll say something like, yeah, there's no field for that. Or they'll ask for it and they'll ask for the information, which is great, and then they don't use it. It's like come on.
Yeah.
So I think it requires a level of just thoughtfulness and to consider the possibility that your initial impression of a person isn't correct. And so until you know, don't assume. And when you're corrected, just adjust and move on. Just as if like you mispronounce somebody's name, they're Andrea instead of Andrea. Okay, just make a note, fix it, move on. And if you make the same mistake over and over again a couple of times, that's okay. Just correct yourself. But I think as long as you're making an effort, it's not going to be problematic. That's kind of my perspective. And I'm actually doing a year-long experiment right now. I have 3 little jars in my bedroom, and one's for times that I'm misgendered, the times where I'm correctly addressed, and the times that either I misgender someone or assume someone's gender. And so for each instance, I put in a penny. So
Wow.
we're 9 weeks in. The number I'm misgendered on like a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 basis right now. And for transparency, I've misgendered or assumed a gender, once or twice a week. So I am not pure as driven snow. So it's something that I'm working on myself.
What a unique situation that you're in. In a situation where you've created freedom for yourself in terms of who you want to be, who you feel to be, not who you want to be, but
Yeah, who I am.
who you are, right? And at the same time you're also now in a situation where you're getting judged and you're getting, sort of put, like held down, right? Mm-hmm. So it's and I'm like, this is my argument for like why people should just let people be, right? Like,
what a concept.
If you wouldn't be trying this hard, right? Like, why would this person be like, I've got to do this if it wasn't like them, right? Because do you think that they would open themselves up for this type of, abuse, really, if they didn't feel that? Like, if that wasn't who they are, right? So it's such a strange, such a unique situation.
It
for you.
is, and I'm watching from the sidelines, literally, and for like trans kids in sports, and I think asking questions is not problematic. I think making assumptions, and making judgments based on maybe your feelings or your fears versus fact is what's getting us into a lot of trouble as a society.
Yeah, I think everybody just kind of wants to impose their opinion and perspective and think that is the way. Like this is the way, guys.
Right. Or this is the way it's always been, and anything that suggests that I have to make a change is threatening, so therefore no.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I'm all about the tolerance. I'm all about that. So, all right, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about your books. Talk about you've written 3 books. What are they called?
The first book is The Legal Side of Blogging: How Not to Get Sued, Fired, Arrested, or Killed. The second book is Flash Mob Law: about the legalities of doing and participating in flash mobs. And then the third book is a variation of my first book called The Legal Side of Blogging for Lawyers.
So you felt very strongly to write about these books. What drove you to write the first book about blogging and not wanting to get killed as a result? I mean, that is extreme.
It is, but in some countries that actually can happen. Where like if being gay is illegal or like witchcraft is illegal, not the US, but other countries where they have weird laws. So it started because I was a blogger. I am a blogger. And so I was a law student and I needed to figure out how far can I push the envelope before I cross the line. And so that turned into a blog series, and that turned into my desire to take cyber law class and media law classes, and it just organically developed into a book, which I really probably should revise for just social media in general, when I have time and unfortunately, I have to sleep occasionally, so cat keeps getting in the way. So that's where the first book came from, and then the third book was just the things that lawyers need to know about, the do's and don'ts of blogging and how it's not an ad, it's about helping your audience. And then the second book, Flash Mob Law, came out of the situation and the fact that I was a flash mob organizer. So I've been in,
What?
yeah, I think I've done
Cool.
close to 24, and I even did an independent study while I was in law school about the legal implications of organizing flash mobs. Again, just keeping myself out of trouble. And these are occasionally I do get questions from people, usually younger people, about their senior prank, or somebody will want to do some kind of activity, and they don't want to get sued or arrested after the fact.
Yeah. So you're a visionary. Yeah, I know. How do you take what's your process from ideation to creation? Kind of take me through that a little bit.
I realized that I really need to feel that energy, that pull to be like, this is something that needs to be out there. Otherwise, I won't put fingers to keyboard voluntarily. So when I started my personal blog, Undeniable Ruth, it really was what it turns me on or pisses me off this week. And that's where I blogged about. And it's evolved a bit since then. But it comes from just the perspective of this isn't out there and it needs to be. And whether it's a perspective that just isn't shared or a perspective that other people don't know about, like my experiences as a non-binary person. And I like being in a situation where, at least in my professional life, where I'm a professional helper and I can help people in ways that they really can't do for themselves. And so my blog, especially on Geek Law Firm, is an extension of that, whether it's explaining how to do something or why something is. That's what I like to do with the content that I create.
That's cool. How do you stay focused, right, in this ever evolving ads getting thrown at you in content and text messages and then emails, and what are your ways on how you kind of stay focused and grounded?
It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It is hard.
Very difficult.
But when I need to, if I just feel like there's just too much input coming in where either I can't get work done or I'm just going to mentally short circuit, I will go into my mental blanket fort and just be like, nope, like I'm just going to go hide and do my thing. And so I will take my phone and put it where I can't see or hear it. Be like, I'll be back. I've learned from experience. Nothing has happened that not being near my phone for a couple hours was a crisis. So I do that. I love my little Shocks bone conducting headphones. And so that's a way that I can just put that on, put on my playlist of songs that make me smile, just be like, I'm just going to be here doing my thing and just creating. And to a degree, I try to be very aware of what really matters to me, which is for the most part is not most ads and not most things that other people seem to be focused on in their day-to-day lives. I mean, of course, like the big, world issues and climate change and wars and whatnot. Yes, I care about that, but the rest of the other stuff, it's like, no, a year from now, number one, this doesn't matter today. Two, this really isn't going to matter a year from now. And so I try to just filter that out as much as possible.
Yeah. What does 2024 look like for you?
Oh, personally, professionally, you want to narrow that down a little bit?
Let's talk about professionally. What does that look like?
I'm going to work. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. People will not stop suing each other. So I'm going to still be lawyering away. I'm going to be, the goal is to create a whole lot more, getting back on the blogging horse consistently. So far, like the last couple of years, the only consistent content I've created was my newsletter, Ruth and Consequences, but now it's time to be a regular blogger again and really carve out time to make that happen. I'm going to read books because the pile of books on my desk, on my bedside table is massive, and I want to read all of them and keep adding to it. So, I don't have any massive, I don't have a book coming out. I don't have anything massive coming out like that yet. I have ideas, spinning in the head, but nothing I'm ready to announce yet. So for the professional side, it's going to be busy, but hopefully pretty even keel.
Nice. How do you help people?
Lots of different ways. Why don't I form a coherent thought and then open my mouth and speak a sentence? As a lawyer, I get to do things like write their contracts, answer the questions that they can't answer and the Google machine can't explain to them in a way that they understand. I get to, sometimes I get to sue people, not the highlight of my day, but it's part of, sometimes resolving conflicts. I get to defend people in lawsuits. Again, not the highlight of my day, but necessary at times. And really, unless you've been to law school, there's a whole lot of legal issues Joe average people do not understand. And so I get to use my knowledge to help people, for the most part, run their businesses better, sometimes their individual lives. And so that's a lot of fun. And then in my personal life, I volunteer at a farm animal sanctuary. So, I tell people who know me don't bother reaching out to me on a Monday morning, because while you're, trudging into the office and sitting down at your computer, I'm out on a farm full of like 100+ rescue animals, doing, their meds and their meals and scooping poop and putting out hay. And, that's one of the highlights of my week.
That's awesome. And if people wanted to find you, where do they go?
Probably the best place is either geeklawfirm.com or just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the white Ruth Carter, not the black Oscar-winning costume designer. She's amazing, but we're not the same person. And if you look closely, you'll see that my profile picture is. I think I'm still cosplaying in my LinkedIn photo. So have fun with that.
Fun.
Yep.
Very cool. Ruth, thank you so much for being on the show. Amazing insight. Love the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment. For all of your social media, podcasting needs, digital marketing, we got you. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall anywhere where you can listen to a podcast, which is probably what you're listening to right now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next week.